18 months earlier, the air in my father's study felt tight. Books and trophies stared down like silent judges. I sat across from him, fingers locked together to stay steady. I told him I was leaving my corporate marketing job. I needed something that felt like a life, not just a salary. I wanted to build brands with meaning, not follow soulless scripts. He didn't even lower his newspaper. He just exhaled sharply, amused or annoyed, I couldn't tell. "That sounds like a crisis," he said. "And way too early for one." His dismissal landed like a punch wrapped in velvet. I tried to explain my vision, my plans, my excitement. But he waved them away like dust on his sleeve. My voice shrank while his certainty filled the room. He never asked what I wanted, only what I was giving up. At family dinners, success always had a hierarchy. My sister's career saving lives. My brother's job moving real money. Those earned applause and champagne. Mine earned jokes. "How's the little laptop hobby?" they ask, smirking as if I couldn't hear the condescension. They imagined I made logos in my pajamas for pocket change. They didn't know I was rebuilding reputations, saving companies from collapse, creating strategies that shifted markets. But the harder I worked, the louder their doubt became. I kept attending gatherings anyway. Kept hopping one day, they'd see me clearly. Kept chasing a validation that slipped like water through fingers. Every comment chipped away something tender in me. A quiet hurt I tried to name as patience. I told myself families tease sometimes. I told myself they loved me in their own way. But love without respect feels like a locked door. Months passed, and I grew my business alone. Every win was celebrated only by me and my laptop screen. When I signed my first major client, I wanted to scream with joy. Instead, I answered a group chat asking if I had found a real job yet. Their laughter pinged in my pocket like stones. I told myself to toughen up. Pretend it didn't matter. Pretend their voices weren't becoming my inner critic. But silence sometimes hurts more than insults. They avoided asking about my work at all, as if ignoring it could make it evaporate. Their approval dangled on a string I could never reach. The more I stretched, the more it pulled away. I stayed small to keep peace. I swallowed words to keep smiles. I agreed to roles that suffocated me. The obedient daughter. The easy one. The joke that wouldn't fight back. Late at night, doubts gathered around me like shadows. What if they were right about me? What if I was foolish to dream beyond their limits? I stared at the ceiling, wondering when belief turned into burden. Wondering how much of myself I had traded for their comfort. I kept showing up, exhausted but persistent. Hopping one moment would change everything. But the thing about hope is this. It can keep you in places that break you, until the break becomes undeniable. The morning after the birthday dinner, my phone buzzed nonstop. Missed calls stacked on the screen like urgent warnings. I stared at their names and felt nothing but exhaustion. A knock rattled my apartment door before I could breathe. I opened it to see my mother's anxious smile. My father stood behind her, arms crossed like a verdict. My brother lingered in the hallway, avoiding my eyes. They marched inside without waiting for permission. The living room felt suddenly too small for all the tension. My father began speaking before I could close the door. "This drama has gone on long enough," he declared. "You embarrassed your mother. You embarrassed us all." His words slapped more than shouted. I stood still, grounding myself on the hardwood floor. "You're dragging out something that should have been forgotten," he continued. "We expect better from you." I asked what better meant. His eyes tightened at the question. "You know exactly what we mean," he said. My mother tried a softer tone. "You hurt your brother on his special night." I blinked in confusion. "It was Mom's birthday," I said. She looked away as if the truth complicated things. My brother finally spoke. Why couldn't you just laugh along? As if disrespect was a joke, I failed to understand. I looked at the 3 people who raised me, or maybe shaped me into silence. Anger didn't rise. Clarity did. I left because no one respects what I do, I said quietly. Not a shout. Not a plea. Just a fact. My father scoffed, loud enough to fill the room. You're too sensitive. The familiar verdict, meant to end all arguments. But this time, it only exposed his ignorance. My hand steadied by my side. You've never acknowledged my success, I said. Not once. They stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. It made sense. Respect was not a language we shared. I stepped back toward the door and opened it wide. I need you to leave, I said. My mother gasped, as if I had broken a sacred rule. My father's face darkened with offended pride. He stepped forward, towering. You don't get to dismiss us, he warned. I didn't flinch. I repeated myself with steady breath. Please leave. He hesitated, stunned by my refusal to bend. My mother reached for me, but her hand dropped halfway. My brother looked hurt, as if loyalty meant surrender. One by one they walked out. No slam. Just a door closing on decades of patterns. Silence rushed in behind them. I sat on the couch, heart pounding but calm. Every memory replayed at once. Every moment I chose peace over myself. Every lie I told to stay loved. I realized how long I had been shrinking to fit their comfort. How long I accepted crumbs and called it care. I pressed my palms against my knees. The quiet felt heavy but honest. For the first time in my life, I had chosen me. And the cost of that choice echoed in the stillness. A thick ivory envelope waited on my kitchen counter days later. My name written in elegant cursive like nothing had changed. Inside, a formal invitation to my brother's engagement party. A handwritten note at the bottom pretended warmth. We hope you can make it. Hope, not want, not need, just obligation disguised as politeness. They assumed my return, without apology or reflection. Assumed I would fold like always. A text from my brother arrived seconds later. You got the invite, right? Please RSVP. No mention of raised voices in my apartment. No acknowledgement of the tear in the family fabric. Just business as usual. Pretend nothing happened. Pretend my boundaries were a phase. I placed the invitation face down. The paper felt heavier than it should. I opened social media without thinking. A new photo showed my family at dinner. Every seat filled but mine. Comments full of praise for togetherness. My father replied to one. So grateful for family that shows up. A sentence sharp enough to cut skin. Their world spun perfectly without me. My absence laughed off as stubbornness. My hurt downgraded to sensitivity. My value measured only by what I provide them. Not who I am. My phone buzzed again, a video call this time. All their faces gathered on one screen. My mother spoke first, her tone sugary thin. Honey, we just want to clear the air. Which always meant they wanted me to erase it. My father leaned forward. Turn on your camera. We need to talk like adults. Translation. Accept blame and apologize quickly. I turned on the camera anyway. Their eyes scanned my face for weakness. We need you at the engagement party, my mother insisted. The whole family will be there. I haven't decided, I said. Shock rippled through the screen. My brother looked betrayed. What do you mean you haven't decided? As if this is about you, my sister added. My chest tightened, breath unsteady. I'm considering what's healthiest for me, I replied. They hated that sentence. It didn't fit the script. My father's voice grew louder. You always make things difficult. The label returned like a childhood bruise. Difficult for wanting respect. Difficult for refusing to laugh at my own belittling. Difficult for having a spine. If you skip this, my mother said softly, it could permanently damage the family. Threat disguised as worry. If you cared, you'd show up, my sister pressed. Caring in their dictionary meant surrender. I stared at the tiny faces on my screen. Faces I once believed were my safest place. Faces that now demanded my silence as proof of love. Think about what people will say if you're missing, my sister continued. Reputation ranked higher than truth. Higher than healing. I ended the call after promises to consider. When the screen went black, tears finally escaped. I wasn't crying for them. I was grieving the version of me that still wanted their approval. I opened my laptop to distract myself. A new email waited like a lifeline. A former client wrote with excitement. Their business just had its most successful quarter in 5 years. They thanked me. They saw me. They validated what my family refused to understand. I reread the message again and again. A warmth grew in my chest, fragile but real. Maybe I didn't need the invitation to feel chosen. Maybe blood wasn't the only bond that mattered. Maybe love wasn't supposed to shrink you. I looked again at the envelope. It hadn't changed, but I had. Days turned into weeks, and my focus sharpened like survival. I poured myself into building the studio I once only imagined. Blueprints, budgets, endless calls filled every corner of my days. I chose paint colors with the same care I never gave myself before. I worked past midnight, fueled by hunger for a future without permission. Each decision I made felt like stitching a new life together carefully. Emails from clients arrived with gratitude instead of doubt or mockery. Strangers trusted my vision more than the people who raised me. That truth ached and healed me at the same time. Some nights, the silence in my apartment felt too loud to bear. I wondered if success would always taste slightly lonely. Then kindness knocked on my door in unexpected forms. My neighbor brought me warm bread wrapped in a towel. You look like someone who forgets to eat, she teased gently. Her smile felt like permission to breathe again for a moment. Former colleagues texted offering help without strings or judgment. We believe in what you're building, they said without hesitation. Their support felt like sunlight after months of cold shadow. I realized community doesn't require shared DNA to feel real. The pressure from my family never stopped crashing over me. Texts came daily, layered with guilt and sharpened expectations. Stop being dramatic. Don't ruin this for your brother. Family comes first, remember. Their words tried to pull me back into a shrinking version of myself. But the studio plans, spread across my table, pushed me forward. Floor diagrams and furniture designs looked like freedom in ink. I signed a lease on a small space in the arts district. A corner unit with high windows catching golden morning light. My heart raced as I held the keys for the first time. This place didn't know me as the difficult daughter or the joke. It only knew possibility, fresh and untainted by history. When doubt crept in, I forced myself to keep building anyway. Persistence became my quiet rebellion against every belittling word. I learned that courage is often boring, repetitive, unglamorous work. I set a launch date, the same day as the engagement party. Not out of revenge, but alignment with my own priorities finally. I sent invitations to clients and collaborators who believed in me. I didn't send one to my family, and that felt like truth. The thought of that day both thrilled and terrified me deeply. What if nobody showed up? What if I failed publicly and confirmed their beliefs? But another question grew louder inside my chest each morning. What if I was right about me all along? The studio slowly transformed with fresh paint and borrowed hands. People I barely knew showed up with tools and encouragement. We laughed over spilled paint and mismatched furniture screws. I felt seen in a way that didn't demand perfection or compliance. This chosen circle celebrated every tiny milestone without judgment. Their joy for me wasn't conditional or reluctant, just genuine. I looked at the growing space and felt something unfamiliar. A life that fit me, instead of one I had to fit into. The morning of the launch arrived faster than my nerves could adjust. I stood in the middle of the studio, heart thudding against my ribs. The sunlight poured through the tall windows like a quiet blessing. The tables were arranged with portfolios of brands I had rescued. Champagne glasses waited for hands that believed in possibility. Every detail felt like a declaration that I was no longer small. I straightened a stack of business cards with shaking fingers. This space looked like proof I once wished someone would give me. Guests began to arrive in steady waves of warm smiles. Clients told stories of growth, credibility, survival because of my work. Their gratitude wrapped around me louder than my family's silence ever had. I felt pride expanding inside me like breath finally released. A reporter from the local newspaper approached with a notebook ready. She asked how I turned ambition into something tangible and lasting. I answered with a voice steadier than I expected. I talked about strategy, resilience, and rebuilding trust for businesses. Not once did I mention the years begging for validation at home. Applause and admiration replaced the laughter that used to sting me. Then I saw her, my sister standing in the doorway, head tilted in disbelief. She stepped inside as if every step challenged her worldview. "I had no idea this was what you were doing," she said quietly. Her eyes scanned the space like it rewrote every old assumption. A man tapped my shoulder before I could answer her. It was one of my biggest clients, smiling like I had saved his life. He told the reporter how my strategies increased their sales drastically. The room became a chorus of stories about my work changing futures. My sister listened, stunned into silence for once. I could almost see her pride battling with old habits of doubt. Another round of guests arrived carrying gifts and congratulations. Neighbors came with flowers and handmade cards for good luck. Their kindness grounded me deeper than any family approval ever could. I felt surrounded by a community built from mutual respect. Not expectation, not obligation, not blood. Just genuine connection. I slipped away for a moment to breathe near the window. Outside, a breeze carried faint echoes of the world I left behind. My phone buzzed, with notifications erupting like fireworks. Photos of the launch posted by my sister now filled the family group chat. My father's response popped up first. "Work is not family. Priorities matter." Old patterns still clung to him like armor. My mother sent a gentler message. "Your space looks beautiful, dear." My brother's text surprised me most. "I'm proud of you. Sorry I missed it." His words felt like a soft knock on the door between us. I slipped the phone into my pocket, refusing to let it decide my joy. Back inside, a toast was being called in my honor. Glasses clinked, voices lifted, and my name carried warmth, not ridicule. I realized I wasn't missing the party my family demanded I attend. I was hosting the one I had spent years searching for. The celebration of who I truly am. Not the version they preferred. I stood taller, feeling the floor steady beneath my feet. Success wasn't loud or desperate. It simply existed, undeniable and earned. In that moment, I understood something essential. I never needed a seat at their table. I had built my own. Weeks turned into months, and momentum followed me like a loyal shadow. My studio expanded faster than I dared to hope. New clients arrived because someone they trusted whispered my name. I built systems, hired a small team, and delegated for the first time. Pride became less of a secret and more of a daily companion. One morning, an email changed everything again. A business leadership forum invited me to speak as a panelist. The topic was success without traditional support. I almost laughed at the accuracy of the invitation. The event hall glowed with professional shine when I arrived. Rows of chairs filled with faces expecting answers from me. My heart raced, but courage steadied my spine. I stepped onto the stage without asking permission to belong. I talked about building when no one claps for you yet. About choosing yourself, even when it feels like betrayal to others. The audience leaned in, as if I spoke a truth they already knew. Then a familiar silhouette caught my eye in the crowd. My father sat 6 rows back, arms crossed like a fortress. His presence struck me harder than any criticism ever had. My voice wavered for half a second, then strengthened again. I didn't speak to him, but I didn't speak around him either. When the applause came, it echoed deeper than any family dinner toast. After the panel, people gathered to ask for advice and connections. Compliments felt earned, not borrowed or begged for. And then there he was again, cutting through the crowd. My father stopped just a step away, observing me like a stranger. "That was impressive," he said, as if the words cost him something. "You've built something real." For a second, the child in me wanted to fall into his approval. But the woman I've become held her ground. "Thank you for coming," I said simply. He reached out his hand like a peace offering. A gesture decades too late. I didn't take it. "You're not my enemy," I said calmly. "But you chose pride over seeing me." His expression cracked for a moment, just enough to reveal discomfort. He lowered his hand slowly, confused that I didn't crave his validation. I excused myself before he could rebuild the walls between us. Over the next week, phone calls from relatives doubled overnight. Some accused me of breaking his heart. Others whispered admiration they were too frightened to express publicly. The family narrative began to split down the middle. Not everyone agreed that silence was still my role to play. One evening, I walked into my expanded studio at golden hour. My team sat around the conference table, confident and capable. Their laughter filled the room with the warmth I used to beg for. We reviewed numbers that proved our growth was not an accident. 40% increase in revenue. More articles, more opportunities, more momentum every day. Later, at a dinner I hosted for friends and collaborators, we toasted. Not to perfection, not to obedience, but to a life built on honest foundations. In the kitchen, my neighbor nudged me playfully. "Remember when you doubted whether this could work?" I smiled, remembering the nights I cried quietly at my desk. Remembering how far confidence had traveled to reach me. Another invitation arrived in the mail the next morning. A holiday gathering at my parents' home, months away. A simple, handwritten note from my mother clung to the margin. "We miss you." 3 words that once could have undone me completely. Now they only stirred a quiet contemplation. I placed the invitation beside my computer. I would go, but not as the daughter they used to command. Not as the quiet one, or the easy one, or the joke. I would go as the woman I fought to become. If I returned, it would be on my terms with boundaries intact. No shrinking. No begging. No performing a version of myself to make them comfortable. The choice was no longer between family or freedom. It was about bringing my full self wherever I stepped next, and making sure I never abandoned her again. The morning air tastes different now, lighter and steady. I set the Thanksgiving invitation on my desk and breathe. No tremor in my hands, no familiar knot in my chest. I will walk back into that house without shrinking. I will sit at their table without apologizing for existing. They may still misunderstand me, or doubt me, or belittle what I've built. But their opinions no longer shape the walls of my world. I have my own table, my own circle, my own name said with respect. The girl who once begged for their validation is gone. The woman who returns stands taller than their expectations. If they choose to know me, they will meet all of me. Not the edited version they once preferred. Outside my window, the city moves with quiet certainty. I lock up the studio and step into the afternoon light. The future doesn't feel like a test anymore. It feels like a door that finally opens when I knock. And I am no longer afraid to walk through.